It's been 7 months since Apple launched the iPhone 14 Pro, and the initial marketing was about the brand new dynamic island, which seemed pretty exciting, and I also really wanted to try the new 48 megapixel camera, and I was also hoping Apple would once again increase the battery life. So I've been using it pretty consistently since then, and I wanted to share my experience with you guys. I've gotten used to some of these new features, so I barely notice them anymore. Others I didn't expect actually still make a big impression on me, but also a lot has changed in the past couple of months with so many new phones. So let's see if the iPhone 14 Pro is still a good buy right now, or if it might be better to hold on for a few more months for the new iPhone 15 Pro. But first, quick shout out to our sponsor, the best PDF editor, UPDF, with 54% off. More on that later. So I got this 512GB gold iPhone 14 Pro at the very day of the big launch last year, and let me turn it around so you can see its most notable feature. So yes, it's broken, and this happened just a mere month after I got the phone. It's my fault, of course. I dropped the phone from about 3 feet on the concrete, but I wanted to start with this because I think Apple could also do a better job here. So obviously glass breaks, but even if Apple insists on the glass back design, it's insane that it charges you $500 to replace the back. This is just a complete ripoff. And what's crazy is that the cheaper iPhone 14 model actually uses a new internal structure which allows for easier repairs, and it costs just $170 to fix a broken glass back on the regular 14 model. Now, I hate having to use a case for my phone, but Apple kind of forces users to do that. So actually, if you care about that, you may wait out the new iPhone 15 Pro, which will have a new body and might also use that new structure. No guarantees though. But let's address the number one question I always get about this phone: the battery life. So Apple has very slightly bumped the battery size in the iPhone 14 Pro. It's a 3200 mAh battery, so it should technically have a longer battery life than the 13 Pro. Our battery tests also show that the 14 Pro battery life is better both in our web browsing test and in our YouTube video streaming test. But in real life, well, no, it's not. There are a few possible reasons for that. The first one is the always on display feature. We measured it drains an additional 5 to 6% of battery life per day, but I'm not really using that feature, and still I'm typically getting just below 6 hours of screen on time on the iPhone 14 Pro, about an hour less than I used to get with the 13 Pro. So my guess is that this ultimately has something to do with the brighter screen and the new Apple chip, which now has to also drive the dynamic island. So that might be why the battery drains quicker. Now, to be honest, I usually don't have a problem going through a full day on a single charge, but I got this phone hoping for an improved battery life, and it's actually been a bit worse. Okay, so I also mentioned the dynamic island, and at the launch, Apple made a big deal out of it. So is it all hype or actually useful? Well, for me, the biggest change is that it kind of draws my eyes better than the notch. So I tend to look directly at it. And this kind of improves the Face ID accuracy, which I personally didn't expect. And then you get the other new features like the nice waveform when you play your music. System notifications also show up there. That's nice. The one downside of the dynamic island is that it does stick out a lot more when you watch video on the whole screen. So overall, dynamic island, yeah, it's mostly a thumbs up, but not quite the big deal I hoped it would be. And before we jump into the camera, here's a reminder to subscribe to our channel if you enjoyed this video. It helps us make more like this one. So the camera is the one area I think the iPhone 14 Pro could do a little bit better. The big story is all about the new 48 megapixel sensor, but the reality is that by default you still get 12 megapixel photos, and you need to actually shoot raw photos and then edit them in order to get a full 48 megapixel shot. This is really annoying because 48 megapixel shots actually look great here. You get a ton, and I mean a ton more detail, but it's also real pain having to edit every single picture. Just give us that raw look in a JPEG file, Apple. So one thing the iPhone 14 Pro lacks is a full-blown PDF editor, and that's where I usually go to UPDF. This app is a one-stop solution for all sorts of PDF issues, and with just one license you get to use it on all platforms: Mac, Windows, Android or iOS. Here's what it looks like on iOS. The app has a delightful interface and works super fast. And you can do pretty much anything that comes to mind with your PDFs. Read, annotate them with different tools, edit the contents, convert PDFs to various formats. It supports OCR character recognition. It can add passwords to PDFs, reduce their size, sign and organize, as well as easily fill out forms and combine files into one PDF. All the features are free to use, but when you purchase a license, you get to convert an unlimited amount of files, plus you get a whopping 10 gigs of cloud storage, and you can save your files without a watermark. So let me log in real quick to show you the features. So this is a pretty big PDF. It opens super quickly. You click here to annotate, and you have a bunch of tools at your disposal. You can highlight, pick the color that you want, so let's add a highlight here. You can use strike through, underscore, draw squiggly lines, or just use the pencil tool to draw freely. Then you can also use the edit panel by clicking here, so this allows you to change the text, add images and links just like this. And it's also super easy to convert your PDF file. You can convert it to a Word document or an image or many other formats. Finally, UPDF has a number of advantages over the other popular alternative PDF Expert. UPDF works on more platforms, is more affordable, and has more advanced annotation and conversion features. So check out the link in the description right below and get UPDF with a 54% off discount, along with 2 gifts, a Joysoft PDF password remover and 10 gigs of cloud storage for free. And don't forget that one license covers all different platforms. Now, if you shoot pictures like most people, the 12 megapixel shots from the 14 Pro come with this quite extreme sharpening. It's not super noticeable on the small screen of the iPhone, but if you open the pictures on a bigger screen, you really start to notice this. Like in this picture, the tree almost appears to be glowing because of that sharpening. It's not even close to what real life looks like. Photos on the 14 Pro overall just really have that smartphone look. And in the past few months, we have seen a few companies bring their Android flagships, and the image quality is actually really improved there. And I would say that the 14 Pro is also behind the pack with night shots. Especially if you try to use that zoom camera or take a portrait at night, other phones do a much better job. And one more thing, it's also a real struggle to focus up close, and the camera would often switch back and forth between the main and the ultra-wide camera, kind of detecting a macro scene, struggling to pick just one. On the flip side, I really like the speed of the iPhone camera and also the consistency of the colors. The new 2x zoom mode in particular has exceeded all my expectations, and basically for portrait shots, I now mostly use the 2x zoom. It just has the right look and detail is almost as good as the 1x camera. The iPhone is also still the best smartphone for video recording by far, so it's not a bad camera, it's just that it shows some age in some aspects. Now, the one thing I didn't expect to have a lasting impression on me was the speed. So yeah, the iPhone 14 Pro has the Apple A16 Bionic processor, which is faster and blah blah blah, but it's kind of the same thing every year, right? And you usually barely notice this. Now here are the benchmark scores just in case. The iPhone is still about at the top of the rankings, but it's not really about the benchmarks. Even 7 months after the release, I am still at awe just how smooth and effortless everything flows with the 120Hz ProMotion screen. iOS has a large part in that. With the card-like interface, it really feels like juggling a pack of cards, very satisfying. But the one thing I can't quite shake off is just the physical weight of this phone. If you're considering the iPhone 14 Pro, you're probably doing that because it's a smaller phone, so it really should not weigh as much. But take a look at how iPhone weight has evolved year by year. The iPhone XS weighed 6.24 ounces. The iPhone 11 Pro was 6.63. The iPhone 12 Pro was a tiny bit heavier at 6.66. The iPhone 13 Pro went to 7.2 ounces, and the iPhone 14 Pro weighs 7.27. Sure, it's nowhere nearly as heavy as an iPhone Pro Max or a foldable phone, but it sure isn't lightweight either. I'm actually ready to give this phone away and switch to the regular iPhone 14 just because it's not quite as heavy. And if that's also important to you, I have some good news. The iPhone 15 Pro coming in a few months is rumored to use a titanium frame, so it could finally weigh less rather than more, so it might be worth waiting for that model. Now, speaking of the iPhone 15 Pro, it's also set to make a big switch to a new 3nm chip technology, which should be one of the bigger boosts in performance speeds and hopefully make the experience even smoother. It's also set to get 8 gigs of RAM, up from 6 gigabytes, and also finally charge via a USB-C port like all of your other devices. Now, if you're still undecided about the iPhone 14 Pro, I think it makes sense to wait for the new model that's coming out in late September. Just be warned that it is expected to cost a bit more than before. What's your experience with the iPhone 14 Pro if you already own one? Is there one feature you love the most? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.